Hi everyone, this is TJ from Avid and welcome back to MBOX Studio. In this video, we're going to utilize some of our favorite concepts for this unit. We're going to take advantage of everything we've talked about up until this point, and we're going to use it to make a complete song. We're going to kick things off with drums. And we're going to utilize a drum loop that I found in BPM Create, which is included in the MBOX Ignition pack. BPM Create is really easy to navigate, and it's got so many great samples and loops to choose from. I have one saved right here in my downloads that I really enjoyed the sound of. This is a super cool drum loop. And all you have to do to download this is click this button right here. So let's go back over to Pro Tools and create our drum loop. I've already downloaded my track, so I'm going to open my workspace browser. I'm going to go into Sound Libraries, and I'm going to get into my downloads. Here's my drum loop. And as you can see, this icon with the metronome that's highlighted green means that when I drag my drum loop into Pro Tools, it's going to conform to my session tempo. I click and drag into my tracks list, and now my drum loop is in Pro Tools, ready to go. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to rename this. Drum loop sounds like an appropriate name for this. I'm going to cut off the end of this track because I'm only going to use the first half. And I'm also going to take the clip gain down a little bit. Let's hear what this sounds like. Awesome. Now that we have our drums, we don't need our metronome anymore, so I'm going to turn that off. This drum loop is really pretty cool on its own, but I'm going to utilize a great feature within MBOX Studio to spice it up a little bit more. Using the effect send on the back of the unit, we're going to send this drum loop into a guitar overdrive pedal and mix in some huge overdriven drums on top of our clean signal. Since we're sending this signal to a guitar pedal, we want to change a quick preference in MBOX Control. Remember, we can open MBOX Control at any time by pressing this M button on the top of the unit. Click on the gear icon to get into your preferences, and make sure that High Z Out 1 is selected under Effects Loops because that's what our guitar pedal wants to receive. Press OK, and we're ready to move on. To avoid any feedback, let's click on Effect Send 1 and make sure that all of our faders are pulled down. Next, we want to run an instrument cable out of Effect Send 1 into our guitar pedal and back into Effects Return 7 on our MBOX. In Pro Tools, we want to create a send to an available MBOX channel. In this case, I'm going to send this out to channel 3. Let's turn the fader up on our send to make sure that signal gets into the MBOX, and let's play it. Awesome. Let's head back over to MBOX Control and route this back into our effects return. In Effect Send 1, we want to slowly turn up the internal software input 3 while our track is playing so that it feeds into our effects return. Let's do that now. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another track in Pro Tools with Effects Return 7 as our input and make sure that we input monitor that track. I have a track preset saved that makes this really easy. I'm going to pull it up here in my track presets. This one is called Drum Effects. As you can see, the input for this track is Effects Return 7, so it's going to receive that overdriven drum signal. Let's record enable this track. Also, we're going to input monitor this track. Now I'm going to play my drums and adjust my overdrive pedal to taste. Ooh, that sounds awesome. I love how those two are sitting together. Let me close out of this send, and I'm going to record that right there. Press 3 on my numeric keypad to record. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this send inactive because I'm not using it anymore. And now I have two independent drum tracks, my regular drum loop and my affected drum loop, which if I solo and play back sounds like this. Now those two sound really good together on my main monitors, but I want to make sure that that's going to translate to smaller sets of speakers. This is where I'm going to use another feature on the MBOX Studio. I'm going to use my alt monitors. All I have to do is press the encoder switch to get over to my alt monitors. My main monitors are muted, and I can listen through these smaller sets of speakers to make sure that everything is translating well. The next thing that we're going to do is we are going to record our first guitar part. Let me duplicate these drums a couple times so that my guitar loop will match my drum loop. We're going to plug in and set our input gain. I'm going to come into my made hardware output, and I'm going to turn the fader up on channel 1 so that I can hear my guitar coming back to me. Now I'm going to adjust my input gain right here with this encoder on the left-hand side. Awesome. Now I'm going to use the variable Z function and change my input impedance to high Z. This gives me the feel of plugging into a vintage console. I'm also going to take this DI signal to the next level by utilizing the built-in EQ in MBOX Control. If I press this button right here to unbypass, you can see that I've built this EQ that cuts out some of the lows and adds some sparkle to this guitar signal. And I've also highlighted EQ to DAW, which is going to send my EQ'd guitar signal into Pro Tools to be recorded, so I record exactly what I'm hearing. Now let's tune up on the MBOX using the built-in tuner that can be accessed by this button right here on the front panel. I have my guitar signal ready to go. Let's head back to Pro Tools. Now back here in Pro Tools, I'm going to enable low latency monitoring from the options menu. Next, I'm going to create a new audio track, and once again, I have a track preset saved and ready to go. This one is guitar left. Now that my track is created, let's record enable it and play some funky guitar. But we're going to add another funky guitar. First, let me clip this so it's the same length as our drum loop. Another great feature on this interface is its expression pedal input jack. The obvious use here is a wah pedal. First, I'll go ahead and plug my expression pedal into the expression switch 2 jack on the back of the unit using a basic TRS cable. Next, we're going to come over here to MBOX Control. I'm going to click up here on expression 2 and make sure that expression pedal mode MIDI mode is selected. And yet again, I'm going to utilize variable Z and change my input impedance to 70K. This is the impedance that a wah pedal really wants to receive, and it's going to sound super natural. Now let's go back over to Pro Tools and create our second guitar track. First, I'm going to load up a track preset that already has a wah plugin ready to go. That's going to be this one right here, Guitar Right. As you can see, the black shiny wah plugin has been added on Insert A. What I'm going to do is I'm going to record enable this guitar. I'm going to record enable this MIDI track, which is sending my data from my expression pedal. And if I right click on the plugin and make sure that CC11 is selected, CC11 is expression, I can move my expression pedal and control the sweep of the wah. Now, since we're monitoring out of Pro Tools for this and not MBOX Studio, I'm going to come up here and turn off low latency monitoring. I'm going to come back over to MBOX Control and mute my first track. Now that everything is hooked up and ready to go, let's lay down some funky wah guitar. Press spacebar to stop recording, and let's remove the end of this clip so we have another perfect loop. Now it's time to add some bass, and here I'm going to utilize one of the amazing BrainWorks amp simulations that's included with MBOX. I'm going to control a virtual bass in Expand using a MIDI controller. First, I turn off record enable on these tracks. Once again, check out my handy track presets. And I have one right here called Bass. I press Create, and my bass track is now created for me. Here's the sound that I'm controlling via MIDI in Expand. This is a soft finger bass patch. But like I said, I'm utilizing the amazing Ampeg SVT VR plugin that's included with MBOX to make this sound a lot more realistic and give it that real girth and a little bit of drive. Let's close out of this. I record enable my bass track. Now that our bass is done, the next thing I'm gonna add is a searing lead guitar part. Here we go. As you guessed, I'm back into my track presets. This one is called lead guitar. I press create, and I have my lead guitar track ready to go. Now here we have the incredible BX Mega Dual plugin. So with that plugin loaded on this track, let's turn off record enable on our bass and turn on record enable on our lead guitar. Now once again, I'm gonna come over to MBOX Control, and I'm gonna change my input impedance in this case from 70K to 1 mega ohm. We're back in Pro Tools. Let me pick up my guitar and record a lead guitar part. Press spacebar to stop recording, and we have our solo guitar part. I'm gonna actually try reamping it through this little orange amplifier I have to my right. I think that's gonna give me a more appropriate sound for this kind of quirky, funky song that we have going here. First, we're gonna connect a TS cable to our amp, coming out of the high Z out to amp jack on the front of the unit. Next, we wanna select the track that we want to reamp and change the output to an available send in MBOX. In this case, we're coming out of output 8. I also wanna make sure to bypass this plugin so we have just the clean DI guitar signal being fed through the amp. Now let's go over to MBOX Control. Let's come over to this out to amp channel, and let's turn up output 8. Now I'm going to be hearing playback through my main monitors out of Pro Tools like normal, but my lead guitar part is going to be routed to my amplifier. I'm going to play this track in a loop and adjust my amp settings in real time to get the exact tone that I want. That is sounding good, so it's time to mic up this guitar cabinet and re-record that into Pro Tools. Next, we want to mic up our amplifier and connect the XLR input to an available input on our interface. In this case, we're coming into input 2. We're going to go ahead and create a new track in Pro Tools to receive that input. Once again, I have a track preset ready to go. This one is guitar reamp. You can see that my guitar reamp track has line 2 coming straight into it from our MBOX. So now what I'm gonna do is play back a few more times and set the input gain to get it just right. Last thing I'm gonna do before we record is I'm gonna turn back on low latency monitoring. So I'm gonna be monitoring my track out of my headphones, and just my guitar is going to be coming out of my amp feeding back to MBOX Studio. This will eliminate any risk of feedback. Just like that, we've re-amplified our lead guitar part, and I love how it sounds. We don't need this old lead guitar track anymore, so I'm going to go ahead and hide it and make it inactive, and I'm going to turn off record enable on our reamp track. Next thing I want to do is I want to add a little ambience, a little room to this guitar reamp track. So let me select it and come in here to the inserts. Another plugin that comes with the MBOX Ignition Pack is the Baby Audio Vibe Box. I love what this plugin does to really raw sounding tracks that have no ambience, because it adds some really indescribable magic. It's like a delay and reverb and modulation all rolled up into one. So now I'm going to play back our track and turn this magic dial to kind of add some ambience to our guitar in real time. Kind of a smooth room ambience that I really like the sound of. If you've ever mixed a song before, you know the value of listening back to your mix on various speakers and headphones to make sure that everything is sitting correctly. The Bluetooth feature on MBOX makes this process super easy. I'm going to check my mix on my AirPod. First, let me put them in pairing mode, and then I'm going to hold down the Bluetooth out button on the MBOX for 2 seconds. The Bluetooth button will flash blue, indicating that it's ready to pair. Once my devices are paired, the Bluetooth icon will turn solid blue, and I can toggle over to my Bluetooth out level and adjust it independently of my main monitor levels. Hopefully this gives you just a small glimpse into the creative possibilities with MBOX Studio. Thank you for joining us throughout this entire series. We cannot wait to hear what you create using this device.